Norman Otis Richmond, or as a lot of us call him Uncle Otis.
You want to just introduce yourself to the people tonight?
I wanted to say that according to Ludacris, anybody that wore white socks, you know that he was not pimping. So Michael was not pimping. I guess he had on the white socks. I know he wore the white socks. That was supposed to be a real sign of being a square at one time, but Michael made white socks hip. I'm essentially a journalist and a broadcaster, and I have covered music for many years, and at one time I was in the industry as I sang a little bit at one point, and I came out of Los Angeles, California. I guess the group I sang with, you have never heard of it, but it's called Eminem and the Peanuts, and we had a record. We have records out that we actually have albums on Kent Records in England. But one of the persons that I had the pleasure of working with was Sigidi, and Sigidi produced the SOS band, Baby Take Your Time, Do It Right. Yeah, that was, I grew up with Sigidi. I was a little bit older than Sigidi, but Sigidi always was the greatest among us. And I met Jermaine, I met Tito through interviews, and I also met Randy and Marlon in Toronto. Randy and Marlon came into the Third World Bookstore when it used to be on Bay Street, and Michael had come in the day before to the bookstore. I was working there at the time, and I didn't work that day. Michael came in and brought a ton of books, and for Mr. Johnson, Third World Bookstore used to be owned by a couple named Warren and Lenny Johnston, and this was one of the first black bookstores in Toronto, and probably, without exaggeration, was probably the best black bookstore in North America. In fact, Quincy Jones did his research. A lot of the books he did for Roots, he got from Third World Books and Crafts. I mean, it must have been Quincy Jones who told MJ about Third World Books, because he came in and bought the store up, and he didn't, he left the plant. He left. He never paid Mr. Johnson for some sort of money. It wasn't a huge amount of money. But I was not there that particular day. I did not see Mr. MJ. But I was there when I saw Marlon and Randy, and I got into a little thing with Marlon, but Randy, who was the youngest. Because I asked him a dumb question about what do you know about what he was asking about Nova Scotia, so I assumed that he was just a dumb and blind African American like myself. You know, you assume that black people in America don't know that much about the world. And Randy looked at me. He was upset, very, very upset. I mean, extremely upset. So he basically said, you know, thank you very much, but I've been to Nova Scotia. So they proceeded to buy a bunch of books about Nova Scotia, a bunch of books about Rastafari, and there was a book about deserters, African Americans who had deserted in the Vietnam War. And they bought those particular books. And I found out much later that there's a bookstore in Los Angeles, California, called the Aquarian Spiritual Center. And it used to be the place where the Kwanzaa man, Ron Karenga, he started his organization there. And there was a woman named Bernice and Alfred Lagan. They were, I don't know if you guys, does anybody here remember Third World Books and Crafts? Probably not. Oh yes, my brother. But anyway.
Isn't it still around?
No, it's gone. Different book list has taken its place. Knowledge, we have Knowledge in Brampton, and there's a Nile Valley bookstore, and people are carrying on, but the Third World Books is no longer here. But Mr. Lagan and Mrs. Lagan told me they had a bookstore called the Aquarian Spiritual Center, and they told me that Michael's mother, Catherine, would come there on a regular basis. In fact, she said she was their best customer. She bought all of these books for Michael and the family. And I don't know if too many people know this, but Jermaine Jackson is named Muhammad Abdul Aziz. He accepted Islam in 1988 or 1989. And I wrote an article about Michael Jackson in 205. I've written many articles about Michael Jackson, but in 205 I wrote an article in Share where I defended Michael Jackson because I had heard some people, basically murder mouthing Michael because Michael, he didn't know anything about Africa, and he was this, and he was that, and he was not, and basically just talking foolishness. They didn't know what they're talking about. I mean, I just listened, and I say, people talk a lot of talk, but they don't have anything to back it up. The mere fact is that in 1973 or 1974, the Jacksons went to Senegal, West Africa, Senegal, French-speaking, former colonial, formerly colonized by the French. The leader at that time was Leopold Senghor, who was the big man in negritude. And they went to Senegal in '73, and they were supposed to go to Ethiopia. This hasn't been written about, but they were supposed to go to Ethiopia at the same time. But they didn't go to Ethiopia because Haile Selassie was overthrown at that time. This is 73, 74. And after that, they were supposed to go to South Africa. And in 1978, there was a cultural boycott of South Africa because of the apartheid situation. And the United Nations called for a boycott. They called for artists not to perform in South Africa. This was called by the United Nations, and the United Nations boycott was called for by the South Africans themselves, basically the African National Congress of South Africa, Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela's organization, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, that was the PAC, and the Black Consciousness Movement. And the people around the world supported this particular boycott. And there was a brother by the name of Mamadou Siki, who was the promoter of the Senegal concert. And Senegal, I guess I'm sure, I know a little about Africa. They speak Wolof, and I believe Mamadou Siki was a Wolof brother, and how you say hello in Wolof is Nangadef. I heard Jermaine Jackson say that, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, Mamadou Siki was sick from cancer in '79 and '78, and he called Joe Jackson and told him that the situation in South Africa was deplorable, and you guys should not perform in South Africa. And the contracts had already been signed. So when you sign contracts, you have a lot of problems getting out of those contracts. So Joe Jackson basically, I guess with the Jacksons' permission, they canceled that particular tour of South Africa, and it made international news. Probably you could read about it in Grandma, which is a Cuban newspaper. You could read about it in the Muhammad Speaks, which was the Nation of Islam's little paper. If you go and try to find it in the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, I don't think they would print that particular stuff. Later on, Michael went to Africa many times. The last time he was in Africa was in 1999. He went to Nelson Mandela's birthday, but he went to Gabon, he went to Tunisia, and he had a very positive relationship with the African continent.
Okay, that's very beautiful.